Thank you so much, everybody, for being here as part of the Fall Steinbeck Fellows Reading. I'm Keenan Norris, Associate Professor of English and Creative Writing and the coordinator of the Steinbeck Fellows Program at San Jose State University. And once again, thank you to Janice Zelaya, to Daniel Rivers, the head of the Steinbeck Center, and all of my colleagues here at San Jose State for really helping to keep the Steinbeck Center, the Steinbeck Fellows Program, and everything that we do afloat, up and running, and all that. All right, so we're going to jump right in. I want first to voice our land honor acknowledgement, which is provided by the Mekiya Outini tribe. The San Jose State University community recognizes that the present-day Mekiya Outini tribe, with an enrolled Bureau of Indian Affairs documented membership of over 550 people, is comprised of all of the known surviving American Indian lineages aboriginal to the San Francisco Bay region, who trace their ancestry through the missions Santa Clara, San Jose, and Dolores during the advent of the Hispano-European Empire into Alta California, and who are the successors and living members of the sovereign, historic, previously federally recognized Verona Band of Alameda County. Furthermore, the San Jose State University community recognizes that the university is established within the Alpine Fellowship speaking tribal ethno-historic territory, which, based upon the unratified federal treaties of 1851 through 52, includes the unceded ancestral lands of the Mekiya Outini tribe of the San Francisco Bay Area. Some of the enrolled Mekiya lineages are descended from direct ancestors from the Alpine Outini tribal territory, whose ancestors had affiliation with Mission Santa Clara. The San Jose State University community also recognizes the importance of this land to the indigenous Mekiya Outini people of this region, and consistent with our principles of community and diversity, strives to be good stewards on behalf of the Mekiya Outini tribe whose land we occupy. I also want to add that it's especially important to understand our nation's record of settler colonialism, mass displacement, and genocide, given the politics of our moment. This land acknowledgement means nothing if it simply exists in the past tense or without historical context. Colonization, settler colonization, is an ongoing practice of empire here and around the globe. So we really need to offer more than words, thoughts, and prayers in order to make real reparations to dispossess Native Americans here and to colonize indigenous peoples elsewhere around the world. All right, so the Steinbeck Fellows Program of San Jose State University was endowed through the generosity of the Martha Heasley Cox Foundation and Martha Heasley Cox herself. It offers writers of any age and background a $15,000 fellowship to finish a significant writing project. Named in honor of author John Steinbeck, the program is guided by his lifetime of work in literature, the media, and environmental activism. Fellowships are currently offered in creative writing, excluding poetry, and in Steinbeck Studies. Fellows may be appointed in many fields, including literary scholarship, fiction, drama, education, science, and the media. The Graduate Steinbeck Fellows is another program within the Steinbeck Fellowship. The Steinbeck Center also supports up to 6 exceptional incoming students in our MFA Creative Writing program and MA English programs, with full in-state tuition for their first year of study. All applicants to the 2 programs are considered for these fellowships. There is no additional application. I will put links in the chat to more information on the Steinbeck Fellows program, as well as some of the other things that are mentioned along the course of this introduction. The Steinbeck Fellows program is rising in prestige and impact across our literary landscape. The late Anthony Viasna was a 2020-2021 Steinbeck Fellow. His short story collection, After Parties, received the 2021 National Book Critics Circle Award. That same year, Steinbeck Fellow Meron Hedero was awarded the AKO Kane Prize for a short story Street Sweep. Other former fellows, such as Vanessa Waugh, R.O. Kwan, and Gabriela Garcia, have also gone on to achieve both popular and critical success with their books. In a minute, I'm going to introduce the first of our fellows, who is reading right now, or is going to read tonight. But before that, I want to make a few shout outs to the other Steinbeck Fellows, who are not going to be reading tonight, but who are also a part of our program. Other fellows include Amanda Riscala, Francisco Gonzalez, and Alexia Nader, as well as graduate Steinbeck Fellows, Courtney Caldwell, Daniel Redondo Macias, Peggy Pollard, Willow Barnowski, and Aaron Kelly. All right, with that all said, want to introduce the first of our Steinbeck Fellows. The first to read tonight. AJ Bermudez is an award-winning author, filmmaker, and educator based in New York and Miami. Her first book, Stories No One Hopes Are About Them, won the 2020-22 Iowa Short Fiction Award and was a 2023 Lambda Award finalist. She is thrilled to be working on her second collection of short fiction, The God of Ugly Things, with the support of the Steinbeck Fellowship. Her writing has appeared or is forthcoming in a number of literary journals, including the Kenyon Review, Electric Lit, Virginia Quarterly, Columbia Journal, Chicago Quarterly Review, Boulevard, Story, Hopkins Review, and elsewhere. Her most recent screenwriting project, a feature film called My Dead Friend Zoe, starring Morgan Freeman, Ed Harris, and Natalie Morales, will be released in 2024. She is a winner of the Page Award, the Diverse Voices Award, and the Alpine Fellowship Writing Prize. She currently serves as editor of the Maine Review and teaches fiction at the University of Miami. Bermudez is also a former boxer and EMT, and her work gravitates toward contemporary explorations of power, privilege, and place. AJ, thank you for being with us. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Keenan. I appreciate that introduction very much. And I'm also so grateful to the Steinbeck Fellowship and very honored to be here. As you mentioned in your introduction, I'm working on developing my second collection of short fiction. So I think tonight what I would love to read is a little piece from my second emergent collection, developed in partnership with the Steinbeck Fellowship. It's a very new little piece, very short little piece. And yeah, thank you all for being here and thank you for listening. This is called The Turtle. When Emin gets old, although old is a bit reductive, she thinks, she moves into a slightly smaller apartment on Prince Street, just 2 blocks from the old place, old. There it is again, she's a hypocrite, on Mott. She keeps most of the things from the old place, although they don't fit, not like they're supposed to. The Fruin sculpture with the stitched together dime bags doesn't get the right light. The Klee looks crowded so close to the wall. The clothes fill the closet, although Emin's gotten rid of almost all of Ada's, except, unsentimentally, the few things that look good on Emin, things she borrowed when Ada was alive, and now, she supposes, she'll borrow in perpetuity. She feels almost smug describing this to her therapist, that in Ada's absence, she's begun carrying around 2 lives in one life. She is the small apartment. But the therapist thinks she's talking about commoditization, persons as things, and completely misses the point. Maybe I'm saying it wrong, Emin suggests. You do refer to a number of things by the names of their creators. Emin leaves with the feeling that she's been misunderstood, and also that her therapist does not understand art. Back at the apartment, Emin slips out of her shoes, feeling self-conscious about not just calling them shoes, although she'd kill for someone to reference her work by just her last name, and for someone else to know what they were talking about. She looks around the compact, cluttered topography of the apartment, stacks of coffee table books too heavy to resituate, shelves of trinkets Ada found in Medinas and souks garishly lit from above by panels of recessed lighting, the plum-colored hassock that's been tripped over more times than it's been sat on. She makes coffee in the half-size French press. She insists on coffee, even in private, even though she secretly loves tea, as a protest against time, a refusal to willfully embrace every detail of the caricature of the old woman she feels herself becoming. Even the half-size press she only fills halfway, drinking less and less coffee every day, feeling time like a putty knife, scraping off her tolerance in shavings. She returns to the living room, clutching her small mug, surveying the scene. The project for today is to sell the turtle. She has finally decided to part with it, despite the fact that she feels tremendous guilt about this. She's hated the thing forever. She has also loved the thing forever. Sometimes, she knows, you love something because you see that someone you love loves it. The turtle is brutally ugly, a convex mass roughly the size of a dessert plate, ostensibly crystal, but with slick sulfur cloud smudges of yellowed glass. 2 small rubies for eyes, not even symmetrically positioned, and a little notched cone for the tail. Its neck cranes upward, cocked slightly toward some invisible sun. The artist carved his initials in blunt, ham-fisted strokes on the underbelly, which tells you everything you need to know about his aesthetic sensibilities. Emin is not one of these old women who doesn't know her way around the internet, and she's set up a Craigslist page to sell the turtle. She keeps the description brief. Objet d'art, a turtle, believed crystal with minor gemstones, $20. She's of course dabbled with the idea of simply throwing the turtle away or donating it, but she's seen the way people treat things that are free. Unsightliness notwithstanding, she would like the turtle to go to a good home. Within the hour, 3 respondents have emailed to inquire about the turtle. The first is a young woman, new to the city, who can tell from the post that the owner of the turtle is a sensitive and compassionate soul, and who would like to meet for a coffee and to see if they have a connection, spelled with only 1 N. A photo of the young woman, taken from a sheer cliff of an angle, plummeting toward a lip gloss pout and a shelf bra tank top, is included. The second is simple. Would you, spelled as the letter U, take $5? The third is slightly more elaborate, composed and punctuated in a way that Emin feels she can trust. Hello, if the turtle is still available, I would like to come by and see it. Please let me know a time convenient to you. Thank you. Best, Arthur. Emin writes back with the suggestion of a time that afternoon and the address of a coffee shop on Mulberry. Arthur agrees. At 2:45, Emin sits at a low table near the doorway. The coffee shop has almost no decor beyond a profusion of plants, which the owner rotates in and out of the sunlight of the glass storefront. Emin watches the time, the door. The turtle sits on the surface of the table beside her half-decaffeinated espresso. When Arthur arrives, Emin is stunned that he matches her imagination almost exactly. Sweater, tapered slacks, glasses with stylishly understated frames in pale green. He gives a little wave, raising his palms stiffly but congenially, all the fingers pressed together, then orders an espresso and joins her at the table. I'm Arthur, he says, shaking her hand with the same stiff fingers and a surprising degree of warmth. Emin. This must be the turtle, he says, taking a seat. Yes, Emin says, unsure what else to say. The turtle, she feels, speaks for itself. As a gesture of meeting Arthur halfway, Emin sets the turtle midway on the table between them. Its face angles upward toward Arthur, away from the hand-painted, pinstriped hulk of its shell, with all the splendor of a meteorite in the hood of a car. Bit odd, isn't it? Arthur says. Yes, Emin agrees, then quickly adds, although I think the photos were accurate. Oh, they were. Arthur reaches toward the turtle, then hesitates. May I? Of course. Arthur lifts the turtle from the table with almost reverential care. His hand is just about the size of the shell, and he palms it with the elegant fascination of an athlete trying on a glove. My stepson is crazy for turtles. Ah, Emin thinks of her own stepchild, Wilder, who had a thing for birds into their late teens. Although Emin had only caught the tail end of the phase, it had delighted her. All a person had to do to impress them was to give them a bird object of any kind. His birthday's on Friday. I think he'll like the turtle. Emin could leave it at that, say great, and exchange the turtle for the folded 20 that's already tucked between Arthur's index and middle fingers. But instead she says, when I married my Ada, I did everything to get her kid to like me, which was stupid. We got along fine, but just the same. Ada told me they loved birds, so I bought a figurine of a warbler. They loved it, kept moving it around from the mantel to the windowsill to the table like a centerpiece. It was badly painted. Yellow flecks kept chipping off all over the apartment. You'd have to pick them off your feet when you showered. All the colors were in the wrong places. It was like the artist had never seen a warbler, but that was their favorite thing for a time. Arthur nods, already gliding the bill from between his fingers, and Emin feels an unexpected panic. She wants to have another coffee, although it will obliterate her odds at a good night's sleep, to tell Arthur about the aquarium on Columbus, where the turtles clamber from the water toward the overhead light and jockey for position on the platform with their tiny gnarled flippers. The spot on the west side of the lake, entirely different, but equally good for turtle sighting, where they nestle in actinomorphic clusters on a half-submerged rock when the water line is low. She'd like to hear more about this stepson, to say more about Ada, her talent for finding the ugliest thing in any gift shop from Phoenix to Cairo. She wants to ask Arthur what type of gift wrap he plans on using, to make sure he knows a turtle can live for 200 years, 250 maybe. She feels a surge of desire to attend the stepson's birthday party, crazy, she knows, and to see the look on his face when he opens the gift. But Arthur is already on his feet, smiling with real gratitude. Thank you again for the turtle, he says. Charles will love it. Arthur shakes Emin's hand, then turns, sidesteps a sprawling fern just inside the doorway, and is gone. Although she does not remember beginning to cry, Emin looks down to see that the back of her hand is wet. She rolls the last of the faintly sour lemon peel grit of the espresso taste between her tongue and the roof of her mouth. She has already paid, so she simply heads for the door, as Arthur has, tucking the 20 into her pocket. On the walk home, she takes the long way, past the cemetery and the old apartment on Mott. She looks up to the second-floor fire escape, the long window that could never stay clean, behind which Ada's treasures used to cut a jagged silhouette against the overhead light. When she returns to her apartment on Prince, she stands just inside the doorway, the way Wilder does when they visit, more often than one might visit one's mother's widow, which Emin appreciates, and looks over the apartment and its contents, like the diaspora of a former life. Emin has only twice, to her credit, Googled comforting quotes about grief. She felt goofy doing it, but she likes the one about a loved one living on through the living. She really wishes she'd had the chance to tell Arthur a little bit more about turtles, although she herself is admittedly no expert. Just a thing or two Charles might enjoy. One turtle, for instance, was born during the American Revolution and died during Watergate. Can you imagine? Emin was thrilled and in no small part horrified to learn that a turtle could be nearly as old as a country. She imagines Charles in a striped blue shirt, greedily eyeing a cake in the shape of a turtle. How old is he? She should have asked. She wonders what other turtles are in his collection. He must have figurines, no doubt, and stuffed ones, clothing and a blanket, most likely perhaps a nightlight. She imagines him hauling out all his turtles for display at the party, dragging them to the brink of a suburban swimming pool, and gently tossing them in. She pictures the turtle, Ada's turtle, at the bottom of the pool, first to arrive on account of its ridiculous weight, between a Leonardo action figure and a slow-sinking plush Squirtle. Tomorrow, she decides, she'll sell the Fruin. She'll either contact the dealer, reasonable but a chore, or Tom, whose email she's thrilled to find is still saliently posted on his website, or cut the thing into its original little pieces, unstitching the individual dime backs, some with pressed white powder still inside, from one another, and return them to the park where the artist originally found them. She imagines a whole contingent of young people, tatted and wild-haired, marveling at this ancient drug peddler fumbling for baggies of heroin like ketchup packets in her handbag. Maybe, just to be funny, she'll use the Judith Lieber, a rhinestone purse shaped like a stack of pancakes, a gift from Ada on the heels of a fight about who makes breakfast and who gets to eat it, a last hurrah before, inevitably, the Judith Lieber itself goes the way of the turtle and the Fruin. If she makes it as far as the North Woods on her walk, She'll sit on one of the rocks that juts toward the water and watch for red-eared sliders, although she herself prefers the box turtles. She was recently shocked to hear about people releasing their pet turtles into the lake. The water must, she thinks, be lousy now with Western painteds, Chinese soft shells, and that other kind, what's it called? Something with musk in the name. Ada would know. If, after peddling a few of the Fruin bags, or not, she still hasn't sighted a turtle, there's always the shop on Columbus. A raft of turtles beneath the beatific terrarium light. The certain comfort of a small thing contained. Thank you.
Thank you, AJ. Yeah, AJ, your story put me in mind of an essay, a line from an essay by Zadie Smith that I often taught. A great piece of fiction can demand that you acknowledge the reality of its wildest proposition, no matter how alien it may be to you. It can also force you to concede the radical otherness lurking within things that appear most familiar. So I am sitting right here in the Steinbeck Center. For those of you who are familiar with the San Jose State campus and with and with the Martin Luther King Library, you're probably familiar with the Steinbeck Center as well. For those who are not, we invite you up here anytime. We're on the 5th floor, room 580 on the 5th floor. And for our spring reading, our spring Steinbeck Fellows reading, we do plan to have an in-person event. So here in the Steinbeck Center. All right, so let me now introduce our second reader, our second Steinbeck Fellow for tonight. Xueyou Wang is a writer living in Los Angeles, California. Her work focuses on immigrant women's experiences and transnational, transcultural stories. She is particularly interested in the intersection between Asian diaspora and Latin American cultures. Born in China and raised in Salt Lake City, Utah, Xueyou graduated with a Bachelor of Arts in English and Creative Writing from the University of Southern California and a Master of Arts in Women's and Gender Studies from the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. Her work has appeared in Discover Nikkei and The Margins. She is working on a collection of short stories. Xueyou, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much for that introduction, and thank you for having me here tonight. I'm really thrilled to be here to share my work, and I think AJ is going to be a tough act to follow, but here we go. I wanted to just quickly give a trigger warning. I think that the story that I'm about to read it has some like pretty sensitive elements. So it does talk about rape as well as murder. So if those are like very triggering topics for you, please feel free to, step out, take care of yourself, put your well-being first. So that being said, I'm going to read part of a short story called Winter in Bethlehem. I'm not going to be able to read the full story because I only have 15 minutes, but I'll be reading an excerpt. Let me pull this up. All right, so here goes. I've been at the Hotel Padua for nearly 10 years now. I've worked long enough for a couple raises, although it's criminal how little we're paid. There aren't promotions here because there isn't really a higher position to be promoted to. It pays the rent, and my mom takes care of the utilities and our shared cell phone bill. When we first left, we were worried that my father would try to find us or track us down. But after 4 months passed, then 6, and then a year, we realized that no one was looking for us. He simply didn't care, never had. It's been beautiful to see my mother change from a shell of a woman riddled with stress acne and her hair falling out, to a plumper, rounded-out version of herself with some color in her face. I got to know her personalities in ways that I never thought possible. She has a slightly mean sense of humor and a sharp wit. She knows how to embroider and stitch clothing. She is, despite all my father's berating, a talented cook. These little things make me see her more as a person and less as a mother. I never asked her how she met my father, but she never seemed to want to talk about it. She usually referred to him as her mistake or your father, but never by his name or with a loving tone. It was almost as if she had been captive all those years, an unwilling prisoner to the man who fathered her only child. It's December in 2010, and the snow is coming down hard. Neither my mother nor I have a car, and we rely on public transportation to get to and from work. I'm closing the Cafe Padua, and the sun has already set, even though it's not even yet 6. The darkness multiplies with the flurries of snow that are hurling themselves down to earth. The hotel is creepy at night. Hardly anyone stays there anymore, as Bethlehem is a dying town. While the lobby is brightly lit, there's no one there, save for a single concierge standing behind the opulent front desk. There's clanging from the kitchen as the cooks clean the grill and vents and sweep and mop the floor. I'm wiping the tables down and putting up the chairs. My daughter isn't answering my texts, Sunny says in a worried tone, coming up behind me with her hand on her hip. I look up. She went out with a friend yesterday and still hasn't come home. Oh, I turn to her. Have you called her? Her phone is off, says Sunny. Oh, I say, have you called the friend? Oh, good point. Sunny wanders off, dialing numbers on her cell phone. I continue putting up the chairs. I hear the cooks yelling at each other in Spanish as one of them drops a pan on the floor. Loud laughter ensues. Fuck, it's snowing so hard, I mutter to myself, looking out the floor-to-ceiling window of the cafe. No answer. I left a voicemail, Sunny announces, walking back into the salon. Fuck, what do I do? She doesn't do this. How old is your daughter again? 18. Call the parent of the friend, I suggest. Tried. They said they haven't seen her either. Everyone's trying to reach relatives to see if she might be with them. I turn to Sunny. I'm so sorry. You'll find her. Do you want me to come look for her with you? Sunny makes a face with her brows. I think we might have to do that. The police suggest that we make a missing persons report. Sunny doesn't want to get the police involved, but I tell her they might be able to help. So we go down to the station with a picture of Dina, her daughter, and file a report. Dina is boiled down to numbers. 5'4", 190, 18, last seen at 6 p.m. yesterday. The police seem languid and unbothered. We try to stress that it's urgent. Fucking assholes, Sunny mutters as we pull away from the station. We've already driven to different places that Dina likes to go in Bethlehem. Several bars, a bakery, and a movie theater. No one has seen her. I call my mother to tell her I'll be out late. What are you doing? My mother asks worriedly on the phone. I'm helping my coworker look for her daughter, I explain in my broken Korean. I'll be home in a few hours. Be careful, it is snowing. In response, the snow seems to come down harder, as if to challenge us. After I talk to my mother, Sunny comes up with an idea. They might be drinking at Roman's house, she says. Roman is Dina's boyfriend. He's older and lives with his parents. The parents don't mind if they all drink. We drive up to Roman's house in North Allentown. I wait in the truck, and Sunny runs up and knocks on the door. Through the snow, I see a bald man open the door. They converse for a while, and Sunny runs back to the truck. She was here last night, but she left to come back home at 2 a.m., Sunny says breathlessly. She never made it home. I look at Sunny with alarm. Do you think she was kidnapped? You never know, Sunny says grimly, putting the car in drive. Where are we going now? I'm putting a call out on the radio, she says. I know someone who works at the station. We drive in silence through the thickening snow to the radio station headquarters. I don't even know where we are, but Sunny does. and I bite my lip nervously as Sunny careens her truck down the slippery frost-covered freeway towards the radio station. When we get there, Sunny throws the truck in park, opens her door, and leaps out of her seat. "Stay here. I'll take you home after this," she commands, slamming the door. "I'm coming with you," I yell, opening the passenger door and running after her across the parking lot. The station is closed. The doors are locked, the interior is dark, and no one answers Sunny's pleading knocks. "Call it in," I suggest. We run back to the truck, and Sunny searches through her personal address book for the number for the local radio station. "Fuck, I really don't have their number," she says breathlessly. "I have one more idea." She throws the car in drive and turns on the radio, hoping that they will share their phone number on the airwaves so she can call. We race back to Bethlehem, and she pulls into a parking space in front of a small bookstore. "My daughter said this was a speakeasy," she says, pointing to the bookstore in the back. Maybe she came here after she left Romans. We walk into the bookstore, which by some miracle is still open, and walk towards the back. Sunny describes her daughter to the bookstore clerk, and then the clerk says something surprising. "There was a man here this morning," he says, "who was very drunk. He said he had kidnapped a girl and raped her. He looked like a homeless man, and I told him to leave." Sunny looks aghast. "What? Who was he? What did he look like?" The clerk's eyes flicker over to me. "He was Asian," the clerk says uncomfortably. "Short, had short black hair, was wearing a white t-shirt." There's a stunned silence. "He was Asian?" Sunny looks at the clerk. "Are you sure?" "Positive." Sunny looks at me. "Anything else you remember about him?" "He had a big birthmark on his neck," the clerk says. "Big brown spot-like thing on the right side." My heart starts pounding and blood rushes to my ears. "I know who that is," I say, looking at Sunny. Sunny's eyes are wide. "It is my father, of course." Here are the facts. My father had abducted Sunny's daughter, Dina, knocked her unconscious with a lamp, raped her, and then left her there in his apartment. While her brain hemorrhaged from inside, he wandered the streets of early morning Bethlehem, drinking, singing, and looking at maps in the bookstore. Sunny was on her way to work to open the Cafe Padua while her daughter lay dying. We run out of the bookstore and go back to pick up Roman. We have a plan. I tell Sunny where my father and mother used to live, and we go to the apartment. No one answers the door when we knock, so Roman jimmies the lock with a knife. Luckily, the top lock is not locked. It's a janky door as it is, and it slides open for anyone. We find Dina lying unconscious on his mattress, a thin stream of blood running out of her left ear. Her hair is everywhere. Sunny screams. Roman lifts Dina like a sack of potatoes and runs her downstairs into Sunny's truck. Sunny and I drive her to the hospital. Roman stays at the apartment with a baseball bat and a knife. We bring Dina to the hospital where they treat her for concussion and internal bleeding. They give her different medications to bring down the swelling in her brain and stop the bleeding. At least that's what they try to explain to us, and Sunny cries all night into my shoulder while we wait in the patient waiting room. It reminds me somewhat of my mother, despite the circumstances. My mother crying into my armpit while my father was out running the streets. I start to feel nauseous and uneasy. I had always assumed he was a womanizer, but how many other women had he assaulted while we waited for him at home with scrambled eggs, chives, and rice? "It's not your fault," Sunny says between hiccups. "You're not responsible for what your dad does. He's a piece of shit." "I'm so sorry," I say over and over. "I'm so sorry." "I hope they put him away for the rest of his life," Sunny says grimly. Dina survives and makes a full recovery, but my father does not survive the consequences of his actions. A few days after we find Dina, the inhabitants of an apartment complex in Allentown complain to their landlord of a strange smell coming from the second floor. The landlord and a few tenants break down the door to find a Korean man, badly beaten, stabbed to death. His body is draped in a chair next to a flimsy kitchen table with a note stapled to his forehead. Death to rapists. The police are called and a case is opened. Roman mysteriously disappears to visit relatives in Arizona. My mother is none the wiser, although she wonders why I didn't come home that night. I tell her we were stuck in the snow and spent the night at the Padua Hotel. You have to be more careful, my mother says, pressing my lunch into my hand. I put the lunch in my bag and head to work. Originally, I wanted to quit working at the Cafe Padua, out of respect to Sunny. I felt that there would be too many emotions about the situation. But Sunny felt that I had saved Dina's life. If it hadn't been your father, we wouldn't have found her, Sunny said when I told her I planned to leave. I wouldn't have known who he was. She would have died in that room all alone. You saved her life. It was a strange way of looking at things, but in some way, my being my father's daughter had finally been of use to somebody. I never wanted to feel like I saved anyone, not my mother, not myself, and not Dina. But we had all survived this man, this singular terroristic man, and that was enough to call us sisters, even if I was his blood. That's it.
Thank you, Xueyou. And one, your work more than stands up with everybody else, with all of our fellows and just writers throughout our literary landscape. Thank you again. Okay, so I do want to note that we are going to have a Q&A after our third reader, our third fellow reads here, and so if you have questions that you're beginning to formulate, beginning to think about for the writers, know that you can place them in the chat, and Janice and I will act as moderators essentially, and work through those questions that appear in the chat. Okay, so that will take place a little later. Okay, so I want to move on to our third reader for the evening. Itto Outini is a Fulbright scholar, journalist, writer, Steinbeck Fellow, and most recently, congratulations, Itto, on also being named a McDowell Fellow within the past week. She's a public speaker and founder of Fulbrighters with Disabilities, a chapter of the Fulbright Association. Itto's work has appeared in the Chicago Tribune, the Fulbright Scholar, Ability Magazine, and elsewhere, and her story has been featured by outlets such as BBC Outlook. Organizations for whom she's spoken include Caltech University, the United Nations, Verizon Wireless, and the International Trade Center. Itto received the Steinbeck to finalize her memoir, Blindness is the Light of My Life, which recounts her harrowing journey from rural Morocco, where she was blinded by a family member at the age of 17, to the heights of educational attainment and the halls of global power. She holds an MA in journalism and strategic media from the University of Arkansas, Fayetteville. Itto's husband and co-author, Mekiya Outini, is also a McDowell Fellow and holds an MFA in fiction from the University of Arkansas. His short story, Baptism by Earth, won the 55th New Millennium Award in fiction, and his work has appeared in Chautauqua, the Coachella Review, Willow Springs, and elsewhere. The first two chapters of his novel, Ashes, Ashes, have been featured in the West Trade Review. Itto and Mekiya are the founding editors of The Datekeepers, an international media platform dedicated to telling untold stories and spotlighting well-lived lives. And again, I will put the links to a number of different important websites that I've mentioned or that have been part of this reading tonight in the chat in a moment. Okay, so I want to give the floor over. Floor is yours.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Keenan. First, I am so grateful to the Steinbeck Fellowship for giving me the opportunity and the time and which I didn't have before to finally bring my memoir into the world. Thank you so much. Thank especially to Keenan and Janice for their support since September, since I've started, to also my past and current Steinbeck Fellows. I am also grateful to the Fulbright program for being the first organization to believe in me when no one else did. I am also grateful to my loving husband for all of his support. Without him, I wouldn't have accomplished all of this on my own.
Most of it you would have.
So today I am going to read from chapter 9, English, chapter 9 of my memoir, part of it. I want you all to imagine, you might be looking at me and think, wow, you are blind, but your eyes look good. Well, they're not even real. They're prosthetics. They're basically, I can't see anything. So this chapter is a journey of me learning English language. This journey hasn't been easy, but I've tried to make as much fun of it as I could. There are 3 ways that I read as a blind person. I read through audio, I read through text-to-speech, and Braille display. But if I end up reading with a Braille display now at like almost 10 p.m., y'all gonna be sleepy. So I am grateful to my husband for volunteering to help me read part of chapter 9, English. And I hope you all enjoy it. Thank you.
Okay, so just imagine that I'm Itto.
No, yeah.
For now, I am.
Okay.
In 2017, I was invited to lunch with a group of my American friends who were living in Morocco. The year before, I'd graduated with a bachelor's in applied linguistics from Mohammed V University, and the year before that with an associate's degree in English literature from the University of Moulay Ismail. I'd also earned certificates in English proficiency from the American Language Centers in Meknes and Rabat, and I'd passed the TOEFL and the GRE with flying colors. Most recently, I'd been selected as a Fulbright grantee and accepted into the MA program in journalism and strategic media at the University of Arkansas. Oh yeah, one of the Americans said nonchalantly when I broke the news, Arkansas, they speak a whole other language over there. I'd proven my English proficiency in myriad ways, mastering arcane grammatical rules, reading 5 or 6 books a week, and carrying on sophisticated conversations about Shakespeare, Sartre, and Dostoevsky. I loved English, and I was proud that I'd managed to learn it. When I heard that my English would be useless in Arkansas, my heart sank. For the rest of the meal, I sat lost in thought, barely tasting my food. Oh well, I told myself, trying to stay positive, at least I'm good at languages. When I get there, I'll just have to pick up this new one, whatever it is. Upon arriving in Arkansas, I was relieved to discover that English is, in fact, the dominant language, albeit spoken with a heavy Southern accent. But my relief was short-lived. It didn't take me long to realize that my academic English was of limited use outside the classroom, and that, despite my solid grammar and my robust lexicon, I lacked many basic words that I needed for everyday living. Many of these were terms for foods in common household items. I'd learned to do my grocery shopping in Morocco's outdoor markets, where I'd picked out produce by touch and smell, but in American grocery stores, nearly everything is packaged. There's no discernible difference between a can of black beans, a can of stewed tomatoes, and a can of cat food. I had no choice but to fall back on language, except that my language, in this case, was limited too. One day, I went to the store for aluminum foil, only to realize that I had no idea what Americans called it. In French, it's papier d'aluminium. I decided that my best bet would be to anglicize the word by putting the in front of it, and to pronounce it with a strong Arkansan accent to better make myself understood. Hey, I told the personal assistant, y'all have the poppy aluminium? I don't think we do, she said apologetically. I took her at her word and went home believing that there was no aluminum foil in America. I believed the same thing about milk for a year, not because I didn't know the English word, but because I thought Americans were using it for something else. Back in the Atlas Mountains, the word that I'd learned to translate as milk refers to a thick, creamy substance that comes from mammals and will spoil if left for too long at room temperature. Even after moving to the cities, I'd had limited access to refrigerators and never bought more milk than I could drink in a day. When Americans told me I could buy a gallon of milk and keep it in the fridge for 3 weeks, I concluded that milk must refer to some other popular beverage. When someone asked me if I wanted 1% or 2% milk, I grew even more confused. The gallon jugs might be too big for one person to drink in a sitting, but 1% of one of those jugs wouldn't even be enough to lighten a single cup of coffee. If I was going to buy a whole gallon of milk, I figured I might as well get 100% of it, but somehow that never seemed to be an option. As a new immigrant with neither money nor support from my family, nor even visual cues to help me on my way, I was constantly running up against the reality that languages are more than their syntax and diction. Languages and cultures are inextricably intertwined. Most verbal exchanges, no matter how mundane, hinge on layers of assumptions, illusions, and presuppositions, without which neither party can make themselves understood. The confusion brought on by my efforts to communicate about something as simple as dairy consumption was only the beginning. In Morocco, where communities are tight-knit and social bonds strong, it's not unreasonable to assume that everyone in your neighborhood will know your landlord's name. But when I got lost my second day in Arkansas and started asking strangers to take me back to Peter's house, I was met with consternation. The same rugged individualism I'd once uncritically admired has its downsides, and among them is the fact that no one knew who Peter was, much less which properties he owned. If it weren't for the Fulbright scholars who spotted me wandering alone through the neighborhood and remembered bringing food to my apartment the day before, I might not have gotten home that evening. After this incident, I made sure to learn Peter's address by heart. I even committed his cell phone to memory. The former came in handy whenever I got lost while exploring the town, and the latter proved useful one afternoon when the toilet in Peter's house clogged. Really, it wasn't the toilet's fault. But neither was it mine. No one had ever told me that I shouldn't flush eggshells or tea leaves. Never having unclogged a Western-style toilet before, I called Peter and asked him what to do, and he said he'd send a plumber. Morocco has plumbers, of course, and they probably use the same tools as the American ones, but I'd never had a chance to meet one. I'd never even lived for a significant amount of time in an apartment with running water. As I waited for Peter's plumber to arrive, I started getting excited, thinking about all the questions I would ask him: how sinks and toilets work, what materials are used to make American pipes, if he liked his job, if he enjoyed making friends with his clients, and so on. When he knocked on the door, I let him in, led him to Peter's bathroom, and showed him Peter's clogged toilet. "Do you want something to drink?" I asked him. "I can make coffee." "Oh, no worries," he said. "This shouldn't take too long. Just let me get my steak from the truck." My vexation must have showed on my face. Anxiously, I began to crack my knuckles. "I need to leave," I said. I have a class. Can you call me when your snake is gone, please?" I took my cane and headed for the bus stop. These Americans, I reflected, were completely crazy. How had they come up with the idea of putting snakes down toilets? Were certain types of snakes? Did the snakes really know how to unclog them? Were certain types of snakes preferred, or would they use any snake they managed to lay their hands on? And what if the snake got loose? Would the plumber stick around to catch his snake, or would he drive away and leave the customer to deal with the free-ranging reptile? Also, how did the snakes feel about the arrangement? I was no longer committed to animal rights, but I still didn't believe that any living creature deserved to be shoved down Peter's clogged toilet. That seemed unusual and cruel. I'd lied when I said I had class. That day there was nothing on my schedule at all. I spent several hours wandering around campus, thinking about the plumber and his snake, and then I went to the library to read. It was nearly 10 p.m. before I boarded the bus back to Peter's house. I might have stayed in the library even longer, except that no buses ran after 10 p.m. and I didn't want to get stranded. I half expected to find the plumber dead in Peter's bathroom and the snake on the loose, but when I unlocked the door, I found the apartment empty and Peter's toilet working again. The next day, I called Peter. "The plumber and his snake fixed the toilet," I reported. "But I've got a question. Do all American plumbers keep pet snakes? Or is it just the ones in Arkansas?" Only then did I learn that a drain snake is a long metal cord that unspools from a crank and is used to clear clogged pipes, and not an industry-specific type of service animal. As my days in Arkansas turned into weeks and then months, I soaked up words and concepts and technologies and customs like a sponge. I was voracious and eager to learn. I spent 20 hours out of every 24 asking questions, looking things up, reading, listening to instructional videos, and conducting experiments through trial and error. The only downside was that this left little time for sleeping, and the more exhausted I became, the more I mixed up simple words, especially when they sounded similar to one another. "Excuse me, I said to a server one day at a cafe, "I don't want any meat, but can I please have a bacon?" I'd recently eaten my first bagel, and, still blissfully unaware that I had celiac disease, I wanted to experience this delicacy for a second time. Unfortunately, I couldn't remember its name. "What was that?" the server asked. "Bacon," I repeated. "Can I have a bacon with no meat, please?" If I'd sounded less confident, or if I hadn't spoken English quite so fluently, he might have guessed that I'd used the wrong word. As it was, he thought I was mocking him. "You can't have a bacon without meat," he said irritably. "Well, how about a pickle then?" I said. "Can I have one of those?" The fact that pickle, bacon, and bagel all sound similar to one another would not have been a problem for me if I'd been equally fond of all three foods, but I now found myself playing a shell game in which I had a 66% chance of severe disappointment. Even so, it did not occur to me to try describing the item that I wanted. Confident as always, I felt certain that this time I'd use the right word. "We don't sell pickles on their own," the man said. "They only come with sandwiches and bagels." "That's it!" I shouted. "A bagel! That's the one I want, a bagel!" "Do you want cheese and bacon?" he asked. "Yes, thank you," I said. "I want cheese on my bacon." Bacon and bagel, I reasoned, must be two different words for the same thing. Perhaps this man wasn't even from Arkansas, and he was using synonyms from some other regional dialect with which I wasn't yet familiar. When my bagel arrived, I found it coated with my beloved cheese, but also with large, greasy, nauseating strips of pig meat. Having grown up in a Muslim country, I developed a visceral aversion to pork, and even the thought of trying to pick it off my bagel turned my stomach. To make matters worse, they'd also give me one of those vinegar-soaked cucumbers that Americans seem to love so much. I managed not to vomit all over the table, but left the cafe without eating a thing. A few weeks later, yet another mix-up of this sort occurred when I got lost on my way to the campus cafeteria, which was housed in a building called Bruff Hall, and ended up asking a young undergraduate, who turned out to be a very pious Christian, if he could take me to the brothel.
That's it. Thank you so much. Thanks for reading.
Yeah, thank you so much, Itto and Mekiya. So we are going to transition in a moment to the Q&A. And once again, if there are folks with questions, I really hope that you do have questions. We're first gonna look at the chat. Last I checked, couple few minutes ago, there were no questions placed in the chat. But first you can put questions there, or we can just voice the questions. Let me just check once more, and then I can start out our Q&A with one question, and this question will be for all three writers. So anybody amongst y'all, feel free to, or all three fellows, I should say, to answer. Actually, I hope everybody could answer, and Mekiya as well, if you also like to. And so I guess my question is one, with each of your works, Xueyou, with the terror and the depth and the power of this story that you read, it's quite different from other of your work that I've read. Itto, in many ways, this passage that you and Mekiya presented tonight is much more lighthearted than other parts of the memoir that I'm more familiar with. And AJ, you've worked across numerous different genres and in different narratives over the course of your career. I'm interested in how each of you kind of navigate the different parts of your creative self, these different kind of narrative territories, right? That your stories take you into. How do you sort of compartmentalize, or maybe just throw the doors open to to these different forms of stories, these different stories that come to you? So if anybody could just talk about just the kind of dealing with the diversity of stories that you find yourself telling.
I can answer.
Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, my memoir is it's a story of my life, and there are parts that are really hard, even for me. Now I have a draft, and there are days when I laugh, there are days when I cry, and it's literally like different parts of me, of course, because different times of my life. This part is light, because not only that I already was a Fulbright scholar, was successful by the time, but it was in the U.S. But the parts earlier, the earlier parts in Morocco, like for example, the homelessness chapter, is really, really hard. I even have anecdotes between each chapters to lighten it up. So, but yes, you're right. This one is a little bit different, but again, because it's my love for English language, and my life was already good. And most of the times with my life story, I make fun of things, even if they are hard. For example, if anyone closes their eyes and imagine themselves in a new country, it's not easy. Like you have to see things to know how to order foods, how not language itself is not enough. For example, there's a chapter, Malaysia, where when I was in Malaysia, it was way, way harder because I didn't speak the language and I couldn't see. So it was harder to navigate the country than in the US.
Yeah, thank you. And
Oh, sorry.
yes, Mekiya, did you want to add something?
Is it okay? It's kind of about Itto, but
Yeah.
I don't know if you're going to say it, but it seems to me that Itto has, like, to navigate any scene in the tonality of that scene as a writer, you kind of have to tap into the emotions that you would experience if you were living through it. And Itto has had a life that is composed of such extremes that she's kind of experienced the apex of success and also the apex of trauma and suffering and degradation. And so when you have experienced that range, I think it recalibrates your nervous system a little bit. And someone else might have been in the same situation as Itto, and it might have actually been traumatizing to have that language barrier and be a scholar, but also be facing these small humiliations. But because you've been through so much worse, for you, like, you just rolled with the punches, and because of that, we were able to tap into that comic element more easily, because the point of comparison was something so much worse.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thank you. And Xueyou and AJ, any thoughts? Xueyou, I think your mic is not.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Yeah.
Okay. I think it's an interesting question, because I think, like, the interesting thing about writing from life, kind of like what Itto was saying, like writing from life experiences, is that we have a lot of like smaller lifetimes within our life. There's a lot of different ways that we have lived and the people that we've been in the past.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think looking at those things, like, yes, I wrote a story that was like slightly terrifying and like a little bit traumatic, but I've also recently written a piece about like a 15-year-old girl who's like going through very 15-year-old girl type experiences, you know, being in high school, finding out who she is. So there's like really, I feel like, a range of things that people go through. And that's the beauty of, like, there's like diversity in the human experience, but also within your own experience, like what you know. So yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. AJ.
Yeah, and also just like so many thanks to these two other amazing writers. I'm so grateful to share space with you tonight. But yeah, just to echo a little bit of what's been said, I think, as you mentioned, Keenan, like, I mean, I love like cross-disciplinary writing, but I also think whatever your speed is as a writer, to access that spectrum that Itto touched on, that Xueyou touched on, like, it's something I ask my students sometimes. It's like, all right, well, like, you have to bring more of yourself to a work than you expect your reader to, if it's an invitation. Like, you know, what makes you vulnerable? Like, what scares you? What do you love? Like, what excites you? What turns you on? What scares you? Start from places that are true for you, and then you invite a reader or a listener to this stage that you set. I don't know. That's it for me.
Yeah, thank you. And as this is taking place in the Steinbeck Center, we're also getting a
12 a.m. All others must exit the building now. Once again, the library is now closed to the public. Extended study hours are now in effect.
I'm not part of the public, apparently. So, yeah, I mean, if we were all here in person, that would still happen. So, anyway, moving forward. Yeah, thank you for that. And I'm going to go to the questions here in the chat. First one will actually stay with AJ. Elizabeth Cracked is an MFA student here at San Jose State and has a question for AJ. AJ, Elizabeth would love to know your literary influences. And she adds that your prose on the line level is beautiful. Yeah,
Oh.
yeah, please.
Am I muted? Okay, cool. Thank you, host. First of all, thank you. That's so cool and sweet to say. I feel weird about the word influences because I feel like I grew up reading all the wrong things. Like I just didn't have a proper creative writing education. And so I came to some of that rather late. But I'll talk about who I love and who I teach right now. So a few names on my roster that are people I believe in and make other people read are Disha Philyaw, Danielle Evans, Felicia Rose Chavez for sure. I make people read Margaret Atwood once a semester, Analia Villagra, Meng Jin, who else? Ursula K. Le Guin is often on my syllabi. Tommy Pico, I think, is doing cool work. And I would be remiss to not mention that Keenan Norris was on my most recent syllabus. So those are a few items for your reading list, if that is helpful.
Thank you, AJ. And I'm going to next go to Peggy Pollard, also a current member of our MFA program. Peggy asks all three writers, well, first of all, thanks all three writers, and then asks, can you each share what sparked you to write your pieces that you read tonight, and who is your target audience that you are speaking to in your piece? Itto, let me start with you since to give AJ and Xueyou a little bit of a break.
Sure. So can you hear me?
Yes.
So there's a lot to summarize even like in 30 minutes, but basically I have overcome a lot. There is a higher chance, I don't want to say 99 or 100%, that a person like me will never be able to be with you guys today, let alone becoming a Fulbright scholar, speaking 7 languages. I overcame a lot, including 6 years of homelessness, sexual abuse, rape, and all of it. Anything you can name. I lost my parents at an early age. So my love to storytelling and journalism was something that I was born with. And when I was also blinded by a family member, I started school for the first time at the age of 17. I am 34 now. And I think everyone will learn something from my memoir. I don't think there is a specific audience because I haven't yet to meet any human being who hasn't shared something with me that we have in common, at least 3 or 4 things. And I hope that my memoir will help people understand that they are not alone, that they also can accomplish things, and that there is good in the world more than what we think. a lot of us think that there's a lot of bad in the world, but there's good and bad. But personally, I think there is good in the world more than anything else. Without good people who have supported me, I would be dead. So that's me.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for your powerful testimony. And Xueyou, can I come to you? Again, the question is, can you share what sparked you to write your piece tonight, and who is your target audience that you are speaking to in the piece?
Yeah, thanks for the question. I think so I get inspired a lot by reading other people's writing. So today's piece, Winter in Bethlehem, was inspired by the memoir Heartberries by Teresa Marie Mailhot. She writes extensively about like her experience with absentee father, who I'm not going to ruin the memoir for anyone who might want to read it, and I can drop it in the chat as well because I think it's a wonderful book. But it made me want to explore a piece that's about how do you deal with having a loved one or a father who does terrible things, and like how do you like come to terms with the fact that someone you are related to may not be a very good person, that they may do horrible things to other people. So I think at its base, it could speak to anyone really who has been through something like that, or anyone who is just, I don't know, interested in different experiences, I guess. I don't know. I'm gonna stop here while I'm ahead.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing. And AJ.
Yeah. So the piece that I wrote tonight, The Turtle, is actually a revisiting of a couple of characters who have appeared unnamed in other works that are very much focused on loss and grief. I lost my parents when I was pretty young, and it's really hard when you just don't know when the next hit is coming. And there's a kind of quietude in this piece that I really love. It's just centered on objects. It's centered on containment. It's centered on, I don't know. To me, it's just, I just wanted to write a really simple, sweet, quiet story about people that I love from other places in, my fiction and in my life. And there's something about object. I'm the oldest person in my family line, and so when my parents died, I was like a kid, and I like inherited this house that was just like full of nonsense, and there were all these things, and they were so special, and also so unnecessary and ridiculous, and so anyway, I think this story initially spurred from sort of the comedy and tragedy of just kind of being alone in the experience of, holding a thing that meant something to someone else. It's that simple. I think that's something that sooner or later we all experience.
Yeah, no, thank you. And I think revisiting characters, coming back to the character in a different context, a new story, can reveal layers of depth and complexity in that character. And thank you for all your thoughts. I have one more question from the audience that I want to come to here. And excuse me. This also comes from a current MFA student, Marilyn Hilton. Marilyn wants to hear about the writing practice of each of the fellows. How often do you write? Do you have a favorite location at which you write? What time of day, etc.? Thank you. So, Itto, can we come to you first?
Yeah, thank you. I am an early bird. I am surprised that I'm still up now and functioning. I wake up at like 4 a.m. I write early morning. It's my full time now. Because I am committed to finalizing and publishing my memoir. I mainly work at home. I like to go to public library sometimes, just like to break routine, but when I need to focus, mainly it's at home, early mornings, 5 days a week.
Right. Yeah, this is a discipline, right? That we are all a part of. Xueyou, can I come to you?
Yeah. I write evenings and weekends mostly. I prefer to write during the day because there's something about the daylight that just makes me feel more awake and present. I like to write at the library. Um, and I like to write at cafes, although that can get a little expensive. But when I can, I like to write at coffee shops. So somewhere that's like outside my home because it makes me feel like I'm like getting into a different kind of flow. Mm, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And AJ.
Yeah, I'm with both these writers. I'm team public library. I love it. It's yeah, that's good for me. I'm also an early bird, much like Itto. I used to be like a stay up all night writer, but turns out my best work is at like 7 o'clock in the morning. So I'm trying to do that. But I'm also a huge fan of writing things down in the middle of the night, which are often when you wake up hot nonsense and sometimes really great. But yeah, I like writing early in the morning as a discipline for a couple hours. But if something happens later in the day, I do my best to be available to it.
Yeah. Thank you each, and thank you for your shout outs, your support to our public libraries. My mother, my wonderful mother who's on this call, is or was a librarian herself. So definitely lover of libraries. Okay, so I want to close us out here first by thanking our audience for being here. Secondly, for thanking all of our fellows, Xueyou Wang, AJ Bermudez, Itto and Mekiya Outini, as well as our fellows who will be reading in spring, Amanda Rizcala, Francisco Gonzalez, and Alexia Nader. I also want to thank the Steinbeck Center, the head of the Steinbeck Center, Professor Daniel Rivers, as well as our donors at the Martha Heasley Cox Foundation. Most especially, I want to thank the brains of this whole operation, Janice Zelaya. Thank you so much, Janice. And with that, I'll close us out. Thank you and good night.